Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be breaking down Genesis Raz. He looks pretty interesting, very cool, definitely in terms of his skill design. However, more than anything else, I think he's one of the cooler characters and one of the cooler knights that we've been introduced to. Without further ado, though, let's break down everything you need to know about Genesis Raz. So first and foremost, as you can see, he's got, well, the element of light, and obviously he's a light knight character, and of course he has pretty high defense alongside high HP. Notably, he does have a little bit of effect resistance, but there's no effectiveness, there is no crit chance, and there is no crit damage. Now with this, he does also have a self imprint for HP and a team-wide attack percent imprint, and if you're curious for basically what he's going to be doing, or if you're curious as to what this signifies, this essentially means that he's going to be based around or involving HP scaling in some sort of sense. Now, as we start or breaking down his kit, the first thing we should talk about is his skill 1, Holy Blade. Now, this is a pretty generic skill 1, and honestly, this is about similar to most of the other Raz equivalents skill 1s. They're okay, not the most insane, and though it may do a decent amount of damage by itself, this time around, as opposed to stripping, this S1 actually increases the combat readiness of the caster by 25% and deals damage proportional to the caster's max HP. Makes sense. Now, his skill 2 is where things get really interesting. Now, his skill 2 reads that after inflicting seal and disintegration onto the enemy for 2 turns, you attack the enemy. In addition to this, if you crit with said attack, you'll gain an extra turn. And notably, this damage also scales specifically with the caster's max HP. Now, there's a couple things that you'll probably want to fixate and keep in mind about this. First and foremost, you get souls from using this ability. It's on a 3-turn cooldown with an extra turn, which makes this basically like no cooldown whatsoever. And in addition to this, there is of course the Soulburn Ignore ER here, alongside a new debuff known as Disintegration. Now, Seal, you guys are probably familiar with it. It does actually prevent whatever passive effect of a character. It prevents that from activating. However, Disintegration is really cool because it's a new debuff, as far as I can tell, which decreases the max health of, presumably in this case, any enemy. However, it does read that this effect is doubled when applied to heroes. Now, if this is something where you could actually use this in PvE, again, I don't know if this is specifically going to be usable in PvE, as most of the time something like this would be crazy, but it does again read straight off the bat that it says this effect is doubled when applied to heroes. So the insinuation maybe is that you could use this in some of the hunts, which could be absolutely ridiculous, honestly, because again, you can obviously decrease the max HP by 25%. Ridiculous. Okay, now aside from this, what we need to talk about now is skill 3. Now, the reason why the skill 3 is so crazy is because this ability is somewhat similar to other characters in the game, like the Hua Young, where she can't be affected, and most other super insane undispellable buffs. Now, what his skill 3 to begin with reads off is that it attacks all enemies with divinity and penetrates the target's defense. Now, I do have to make specific clarification, I guess I want to make a bit of a disclaimer that based on what we saw, the damage that Raz ended up dealing to the enemies with this ability was a bit unusual. The main reason why I point this out, and we'll have to wait and see exactly how this skill works before we can actually comment about this, is because it looks like one specific character took an insane amount of damage, whereas everyone else took decent but not nearly the same one-shot type damage that they showcased or meant to insinuate. Now, to add to this, the character that he did end up doing the most damage to was the character that was sealed and disintegrated. And again, with this, basically they had again lost 50% of their health, which is significant. However, again, I'm not exactly sure if this is an ability where it is an AoE defense penetration ability, which again is very powerful, or if this is similar to something like a Stray's ability where one single target takes more damage, or one single target is penetrated defense-wise while no one else is. Whatever the case is, I'll wait and see. However, the ability does deal an insane amount of damage. However, notably as well, the Sacred Covenant buff is absolutely ridiculous, because not only does it effectively give you the all the best parts of the ML Hua Young effect, which is that you cannot be affected by any debuffs or harmful effects, but in addition to this, when you die, you actually revive with 100% health. Now, again, from what I understand with the reading of this wording, this does actually mean that you will bypass someone like Briar Witch Iseria's passive, where you aren't able to revive. as far as I can tell, if this isn't the case, then, well, it is what it is. And this is effectively just something like, I don't know, like a way stronger variation of someone like Ruel or Destina, something to this effect. However, to add to this, it is super insane to point out that although this isn't necessarily cared about as much, this ability is on a 4-turn cooldown. And again, if you pair up, or if you take, or if you consider the skill 2 cooldown alongside the skill 3 cooldown, this ability, or the chain of abilities that you could use on Roz, is you could debilitate and disintegrate someone to half health, then use his skill 3 immediately after, and the next time you get a turn, your skill 2 will be back up, and your skill 3 is on a 1-turn cooldown, so you have to take an additional turn after that, and then you could use his skill 3 again. Now, to be clear, this is a pretty ridiculous looking ability. However, Sacred Covenant is only present for 5 turns, so maybe this does incentivize or provide some sort of counterplay in a sense where you need to obviously end the turn very soon after, as again, if you take too many turns, you'll obviously drop off this buff entirely, and again, you only have 5 turns with this ability, and you're going to be probably taking 2 or 3 pretty rapidly. Now, the other really cool thing about this character is that, well, New Roz is also coming with a Precious Connection, also known as a night exclusive artifact. Now, this artifact gives you 10% HP, which is really helpful, obviously, because it's just, well, it's a solid HP increasing arty. However, to add to this, at the start of your turn, you can gain 10 souls. And although this is only technically activatable twice per battle, this does mean that if you use your skill 2, on Roz, and then you take his second turn, you will actually get a book's worth of souls, which is honestly ridiculous for Roz specifically. However, if you can think of any other knight that can take 2 turns, this is basically a similar feeling sort of artifact in terms of how insane it could be. Off the top of my head, I can imagine that someone like Brieg perhaps probably feels pretty insane with something like this in terms of generating souls, but that's obviously just the tip of the iceberg. Now, what I do want to mention here as well is that there was specific wording that Roz can be obtained once you've cleared a specific mission, and with this, the character, in theory, presumably because of this, is going to be free. In any case though, guys, honestly, based on what we've seen so far about Roz, he looks like he's going to be pretty interesting or pretty good. I don't want to say straight off the bat that he'll be insane, even though this really is the character that people have been waiting for an extremely long time. Again, from what I understand, this skill 2 into skill 3 looks absolutely ridiculous, and it does end up actually one-shotting someone like the Ilanov with basically no problem or no concern, no sweat off his back at all. And with this, I'm pretty interested in seeing how he does in the future. However, for now, I think that them adding a debuff like this, or I guess a new debuff that's kind of like injury but not like injury, is interesting. However, again, we'll see whether or not this is quite as insane as people actually make this out to be. As a reminder, his base stats are pretty low, so in case if you were maybe worried about him one-shotting someone while being 300 speed, maybe that's a bit less realistic. Obviously, we've seen Fire Crow kind of take like that 280 speed, have like 3000 defense, and one-shot someone, but I'm not sure if this will necessarily be the case for Genesis Roz, though of course I could be wrong. That's gonna be it for today. For today's video. Thanks again for watching, guys. I appreciate all the support, and thanks again for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Genesis Roz looks really cool, and he's free. Congratulations, guys. We all have a super nice night again. Anyways, take it easy, stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.